They told Isabel that he was a monster. They told her the Alpha of the North didn't eat human food. He only feasted on the hearts of the girls sent to appease him. When her stepfather locked her in that car and drove her to the edge of the frozen wastes, Isabel didn't pack a bag. You don't need clothes when you're being sent to die. But when the door to the monster's cabin opened, she didn't find death. She found a bowl of hot stew, a fireplace, and a man who had no idea she was supposed to be his sacrifice. But here is the twist. He wasn't the monster. The monsters were the ones who drove her there. This is the story of Isabel and the Blood King. The heating in the 2008 Ford Explorer had been broken for 3 hours. Isabel Bennett could see her breath puffing out in small, ghostly clouds that fogged up the window. But she didn't wipe it away. She didn't want to see where they were going. "Stop shivering," Delwyn snapped from the driver's seat. He didn't look at her. He never looked at her if he could help it. "You look pathetic. He likes them strong, or at least that's what the rumors say." Isabel gripped the seatbelt across her chest. She was 22, but in the hierarchy of the Amanda pack, she was less than a child. She was an omega without a wolf, a dormant. In the modern world, werewolves ran construction companies, security firms, and local governments. They wore suits and drove trucks, but the old laws still applied in the shadows. Debts had to be paid, and Delwyn Amanda, her stepfather, and the Pack Alpha had a massive debt. "Is it true?" Isabel whispered, her voice cracking from disuse. "That he killed the last 3? Delwyn laughed, a harsh barking sound that made the rosary hanging from the rearview mirror swing violently. "Declan Moore. They call him the Blood Alpha for a reason, Izzy. He slaughtered the entire Grey River Council in a single night because they trespassed on his land. He doesn't want a treaty. He wants blood." Delwyn swerved the car off the main highway onto a gravel logging road. The sign they passed was riddled with bullet holes and read, "Private property, more timber, coincidental. Trespassers will be hunted." "Then why send me?" she asked, tears finally spilling over. "If he wants blood, why not send a warrior? Why send a dormant?" Delwyn finally looked at her then. His eyes flashed that sickly wolf yellow for a split second. "Because, sweetie, you're not collateral. You're an insult." The cruelty of it hit her harder than the cold. Delwyn wasn't sending her to broker peace. He was sending her as a mockery. Sending a wolfless girl to the most powerful alpha in the state was a slap in the face. Delwyn was betting that Declan Moore would kill her in a rage, and that death would justify Delwyn rallying the southern packs to war. Isabel was nothing more than a sacrificial lamb meant to start a massacre. The car skidded to a halt. Outside, the trees were ancient firs, towering and black against the twilight snow. The silence here was heavy. It pressed against the car doors. "Get out," Delwyn commanded. "Please," Isabel begged, her hand freezing on the door handle. "Rick, please, I'll work double shifts at the diner. I'll move to the basement. Don't leave me here." Delwyn leaned over, unbuckled her belt, and shoved the door open. The biting wind roared into the cabin. "Out! Walk up the trail. His cabin is 2 miles in. Don't stop moving, or the cold will take you before he does." He pushed her, hard. Isabel tumbled out onto the frozen slush, scraping her palms against the gravel. Before she could scramble up, the Ford was already reversing. The taillights flared red like angry eyes, and then he was gone. She was alone in the territory of the butcher. 2 miles in snow-covered Converse sneakers feels like 100. By the time Isabel saw the light, her feet were numb blocks of ice. She couldn't feel her toes. The wind had whipped her hair into a frozen tangle around her face, and her tears had dried into crusty tracks on her cheeks. She had expected a fortress, a stone castle with iron spikes and wolf skulls on the gates. What she found was a house. It was a large A-frame log cabin, modern and sturdy, with warm yellow light spilling out of huge glass windows. A Ford F-150 was parked in the driveway, covered in a tarp. There was a smell in the air, not of rotting flesh or blood, but of wood smoke and... Rosemary? Isabel stood at the edge of the clearing, shivering so violently her teeth clacked together. This was it. She had to walk up those stairs and knock on death's door. Maybe he'll make it quick, she thought. Maybe he'll just tear my throat out and I won't feel it. She dragged her frozen feet up the wooden steps. Each footfall sounded like a gunshot in the silent night. She reached the heavy oak door. There was no doorbell, just a heavy iron knocker. She raised a trembling hand. She hesitated. Do it, Isabel. Either he kills you, or the frostbite does. She knocked. 3 times. Silence. Then, heavy footsteps. Thud. 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 The floorboards vibrated. Isabel squeezed her eyes shut, tilting her neck to the side, baring her throat. It was an instinctual submission pose, the only defense she had. The door creaked open. A blast of warm air hit her, smelling of cedar and roasting meat. What in the hell? A deep voice rumbled. Isabel didn't open her eyes. I am Isabel Bennett, she recited the script Delwyn had forced her to memorize. Stepdaughter of Alpha Delwyn Amanda. I am your tribute. Silence stretched out. A long, agonizing pause. My what? The voice asked. It sounded less like a growl and more like genuine confusion. Isabel opened one eye. Standing in the doorway was a man. He was massive, easily 6'5", with shoulders that spanned the width of the doorframe. He wasn't wearing armor or covered in war paint. He was wearing grey sweatpants and a black thermal Henley that was strained tight against his chest. He had dark, messy hair and a scruffy beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in a week. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. They weren't glowing red with bloodlust. They were a deep, calm forest green, and right now they were wide with shock. He looked down at her wet sneakers, her shivering frame, her exposed neck. Jesus Christ, he muttered. He stepped back and swung the door wide. Get inside. You're turning blue. Isabel blinked. You aren't going to kill me? Kill you? The man frowned, looking offended. I'm making a pot roast. Get in here before you let all the heat out. Isabel was too stunned to argue. Her body moved on autopilot, drawn toward the warmth. She stumbled over the threshold. The moment she was inside, the heat enveloped her. It was a cozy living room. Leather couches, a massive stone fireplace roaring with flames, shelves lined with books, and a flat-screen TV paused on a football game. The Blood Alpha King, the Butcher of the North, closed the door behind her and locked it. Boots off, he said gruffly, pointing to a rubber mat. I just mopped. Isabel stared at him. You mopped? Yeah. Wolves track in a lot of mud. I'm Declan. He walked past her, heading toward an open kitchen island. Sit by the fire. I'll get you a blanket. You look like you've been dipped in liquid nitrogen. Isabel sank onto the rug in front of the fire, her mind unable to process the data. This was Declan Moore, the man who supposedly ripped a council member in half. He was currently stirring a pot on the stove with a wooden spoon. He returned a moment later with a thick wool throw and wrapped it around her shoulders. His hands were large and hot, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. He didn't linger. He stepped back, crossing his arms over his chest. Okay, Declan said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming serious. Now tell me why Delwyn Amanda left a half-frozen girl on my porch in the middle of a blizzard. And what the hell is a tribute? He said, Isabel's teeth chattered. He said you demanded payment for the border crossing. He said you wanted a blood sacrifice. Declan stared at her for a long moment. Then he pinched the bridge of his nose and let out a long sigh. I didn't ask for a sacrifice, Declan growled, his eyes narrowing. I sent him an email. I asked for a meeting to discuss lumber tariffs. Isabel's jaw dropped. Tariffs? Yes. Taxes on wood. I run a logging company, Isabel. He looked at her, his expression softening from annoyance to something resembling pity. Your stepfather didn't send you here to die because I demanded it. He sent you here to die because he wanted to get rid of you. The truth hit her harder than the cold had. It wasn't a noble sacrifice. It was a disposal. Delwyn had dumped her like unwanted trash, using a fake legend of a monster to cover his tracks. Isabel felt the room spin. The heat, the shock, and the hunger all crashed into her at once. The edges of her vision went black. Whoa, Declan said, moving instantly. He caught her before her head hit the floor. The last thing she felt was being lifted effortlessly into the air, held against a chest that radiated safety and the smell of cedar and rosemary. I've got you, the monster whispered. You're safe. Isabel woke up, drowning in softness. For a terrifying second, she thought she was dead. The mattress beneath her was like a cloud. The sheets were high thread count Egyptian cotton, and the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and expensive cologne. She shot up, gasping. Pain radiated through her hands where she'd scraped them on the gravel, but when she looked down, she saw they were neatly bandaged. She wasn't in a dungeon. She was in a master bedroom. The walls were dark slate. The furniture was heavy walnut, and floor-to-ceiling windows looked out onto a white, blinding landscape. The blizzard had passed, leaving the world buried under 4 feet of snow. The door clicked open. Isabel scrambled backward, pressing her spine against the headboard, pulling the duvet up to her chin. Declan walked in. He looked different in the daylight, less like a shadowy monster, more like a Viking who had shopped at a department store. He held a wooden tray with a steaming mug and a plate of eggs. "Easy," he rumbled, seeing her panic. He set the tray down on the bedside table and took a deliberate step back, raising his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you. I told you that last night." Isabel stared at the food. Her stomach gave a treacherous growl. "Why?" she asked, her voice raspy. "Why are you doing this?" Declan pulled a chair from the corner and sat down, reversing it so his arms rested on the back. He watched her with those intense, forest green eyes. "Because I'm not a psychopath, Isabel, despite what your stepfather tells people." He gestured to the food. "Eat. You're malnourished. I can count your ribs through that sweater, and it pisses me off." Isabel reached for the toast with a shaking hand. She took a bite. Then another. Then she was inhaling the food, the primal need to eat overriding her fear. "Slow down," Declan warned gently. "You'll get sick." Delwyn said. Isabel swallowed hard, wiping crumbs from her lip. "He said you killed the Grey River Council. He said you bathe in blood." Declan snorted, a dry, humourless sound. "I killed the Grey River Council, yes. But not because I'm a maniac. They were poaching omega wolves from my territory and selling them to fighting rings overseas. I went there to stop them. They pulled guns. I finished it." He leaned forward, his expression hardening. "I don't kill for sport. I kill for protection. And right now, I'm trying to figure out why Delwyn Amanda sent a 22-year-old girl to negotiate a lumber tariff with her life. I told you," Isabel whispered. "I'm a dormant. I have no wolf. I'm a burden on the pack's resources. He's been trying to get rid of me since my mum died. This was just convenient." Declan studied her. He looked at her closely, his nostrils flaring slightly as he took in her scent. He frowned. "You don't smell dormant," he murmured, almost to himself. "What?" "Nothing." He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "The roads are blocked. The pass won't be cleared for at least 3 days. You're stuck here." Isabel felt a cold spike of anxiety. "Delwyn will come back. If he knows I'm alive, he'll think I failed. He'll think I made a deal with you to destroy him." "Let him come," Declan said, and for a second, the blood alpha surfaced. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous rumble that vibrated in Isabel's chest. "I made a phone call while you were sleeping. I told Delwyn his tribute was accepted. I told him you belong to me now." Isabel's eyes widened. You claimed me?" "I bought you time," Declan corrected. "As long as he thinks you're my property, he won't touch you. And he won't attack my land, because he thinks I have a hostage. You're safe here, Isabel. But there are rules. Rules. 1. You eat 3 meals a day. No skipping. 2. You don't leave the house without me. There are wild wolves in these woods, real ones, not shifters. And 3. He paused, looking at the bandage on her hand. "Stop acting like you owe me your life. You're a guest, not a prisoner. Now, get dressed. I left some of my old clothes in the bathroom. We have work to do." "Work? I run a business. I can't take 3 days off just because I acquired a roommate. Can you use a computer?" I did the bookkeeping for the pack," she stammered. "Good." Declan turned to leave. "The Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. Meet me downstairs in 20 minutes. For the next 2 days, the cabin existed in a strange, suspended reality. Outside, the wind howled and snow piled up against the windows. Inside, it was quiet, warm, and confusingly domestic. Isabel expected Declan to be a tyrant. Instead, he was efficient. He spent his mornings on conference calls with distributors in Seattle and Portland, barking orders about timber yields and shipping routes. He was a businessman, sharp and ruthless, but fair. Isabel found herself slotting into a routine. She couldn't sit idle. Years of living under Delwyn's thumb had conditioned her to be useful or be punished. So she organized Declan's chaotic filing cabinet. She cooked, though he insisted on chopping the vegetables because he didn't trust her with the big knives yet. On the second night, she was sitting on the rug by the fire, going through a stack of invoices when she felt him watching her. She looked up. Declan was sitting on the couch, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, a laptop balanced on his knees. But he wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at her. "You're good at that," he said. "It's just math," Isabel shrugged. Delwyn's books were messier. He was skimming from the pack funds to pay his gambling debts. I had to hide it so the elders wouldn't find out and kill him. Declan's jaw tightened. "You protected him? After he treated you like garbage?" "I protected my mom," Isabel said quietly. "If he went down, he would have taken her with him. After she died, I just kept doing it out of habit. And fear." Declan set his drink down. The glass clinked loudly on the coaster. "You said you're dormant, that you never shifted. Never. Not even a phantom shift. My wolf is dead. Come here." Isabel froze. "What?" "Come here," he repeated, softer this time. Slowly she stood up and walked over to the couch. Declan shifted, patting the leather beside him. She sat, leaving a foot of distance between them. "Give me your hand." She extended her hand. Declan took it. His skin was scorching hot, the high body temperature of an alpha. He turned her hand over, tracing the lines of her palm with his thumb. The sensation sent a jolt of electricity up her arm that made her breath hitch. "Wolves recognize wolves," Declan said, his voice low and raspy. When you came to my door, my wolf didn't see a human. He didn't see a dormant. He saw something else. He lifted her hand and pressed it against his chest, right over his heart. She could feel the heavy, powerful thud, thud, thud against her palm. "Can you feel that?" he asked. "Yes. Usually my heart beats twice this fast. I have hyperadrenal issues. Most alphas do. It's the rage. It's always there, scratching at the door." He looked into her eyes, and the intensity was overwhelming. "Since you walked into this house, I haven't felt the rage once. My wolf is quiet. He likes you." Isabel's mouth went dry. In werewolf culture, calming an alpha's rage was a sign of extreme compatibility. It was something usually reserved for fated mates, but that was impossible. She was broken. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Neither do I," Declan admitted. He released her hand, but he didn't pull away. "But I did some digging. I have a friend in the Hall of Records. I asked him to pull your birth certificate. The real one, not the one Delwyn filed." Isabel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the snow outside. "What did you find?" Declan reached for a manila folder on the coffee table and handed it to her. "Delwyn isn't just your stepfather, Isabel. He's your usurper." Isabel opened the folder. The document inside was old, a copy of a birth record from 22 years ago. Name: Isabel Bennett. Father: Marcus Bennett. Mother: Sarah Amanda. Isabel stared at the names. "I know this. Marcus was my dad. He died in a car accident when I was a baby." "Marcus Bennett wasn't just a guy," Declan said grimly. "Marcus Bennett was the alpha of the Amanda pack before Delwyn. He was a prime alpha, one of the strongest bloodlines in the state." Declan pointed to a second document, a toxicology report attached to an autopsy. "And he didn't die in a car accident. His throat was ripped out. It was ruled a rogue attack, but the bite marks matched a wolf from inside the pack." Isabel's hand started to shake. "Delwyn. Delwyn was Marcus's beta. He killed your father, married your mother to secure the claim, and took over. But there was a problem. You." "Me?" "You are the blood heir. By law, the pack belongs to you, not him. But he couldn't kill a baby without the pack revolting. So he did the next best thing." Declan's eyes burned with a mixture of fury and sorrow. "Isabel, what did Delwyn make you take every morning? Vitamins?" "Supplements," she recalled. "For my anemia. He said I was sickly." "He was feeding you diluted wolfsbane," Declan revealed, his voice hard as stone. "Small doses, every single day. Enough to keep your wolf in a coma, enough to stop you from shifting, enough to make you weak, docile, and dormant. You aren't wolfless, Isabel. You're an alpha female who's been drugged for 20 years. The room spun. The memories of the bitter pills, the constant fatigue, the headaches, it all clicked into place. Delwyn hadn't just abused her. He had stolen her very essence. He had suppressed her soul to keep his throne. "He sent you to me," Declan continued, "because you're turning 22. That's the age of maturity. The wolfsbane stops working as well when an alpha fully matures. He was terrified you were going to shift and tear him apart, so he sent you to the butcher to do his dirty work." Isabel dropped the folder. She felt sick. Violent nausea roiled in her stomach. "He stole everything," she choked out. "Yes." Declan moved then, sliding across the couch to wrap his arms around her. This time she didn't flinch. She buried her face in his chest, sobbing, not out of sadness, but out of a sudden, white-hot rage that was finally waking up. "He stole your past," Declan whispered into her hair, his hand stroking her back firmly. "But he's not going to take your future. You haven't taken the pills in 2 days. Can you feel it?" She could. It was a subtle heat in her belly, a prickling at the base of her neck. It was like a fire that had been smothered for decades, finally finding a pocket of oxygen. "I'm going to kill him," Isabel said. It wasn't a scream. It was a statement of fact. "We," Declan corrected. He pulled back to look at her, a savage grin touching his lips. "We are going to kill him. But first, we have to wake the Queen." Crash! The sound of shattering glass exploded from the kitchen. Declan was on his feet in a blur of motion, shoving Isabel behind the heavy leather couch. His eyes flashed instantly from green to a glowing, luminous gold. A low, terrifying growl ripped from his throat, a sound that vibrated the floorboards. "Stay down," he commanded. The front door didn't open. It was blown off its hinges. 3 massive wolves, shaggy, wet with snow and smelling of rot, burst into the living room. They weren't Delwyn's men. They were rogues, mercenaries. Delwyn hadn't just relied on Declan to kill her. He had sent a backup team to make sure the job was done. Declan didn't hesitate. He didn't shift. He didn't have time. He grabbed the heavy iron poker from the fireplace and launched himself at the first wolf with the speed of a bullet. Isabel watched from behind the couch, her heart hammering against her ribs. But this time, it wasn't fear paralyzing her. As she watched Declan fight for her, the heat in her belly flared into an inferno. The wolfsbane was fading, and the alpha inside her was waking up. The living room was a slaughterhouse of overturned furniture and flying glass. Declan was a warrior. Isabel could see that in the way he moved. He swung the iron poker with lethal precision, cracking the ribs of the grey wolf that lunged at his throat. But he was human, and they were 3 full-grown shifters in their prime. The largest rogue, a mangy brown beast with a scar running down its muzzle, flanked him. While Declan was busy fending off the grey one, the brown wolf snapped its jaws around Declan's forearm. Declan shouted, a raw, guttural sound of pain, and dropped the poker. "No!" Isabel screamed. The third wolf, black as oil, saw its opening. It launched itself at Declan's exposed back, its weight driving him to the floor. The impact shook the cabin. Declan went down hard, his head cracking against the stone hearth. He went limp. The brown wolf released his arm and moved for his throat. Time seemed to stop for Isabel. She looked at Declan, the only person who had ever offered her warmth, the only person who had looked at her and seen a woman instead of a burden. She saw the blood pooling under his head. Something inside her snapped. It wasn't a mental decision. It was a biological detonation. The heat that had been simmering in her gut exploded. It felt like she had swallowed a grenade. Her vision went red. A sound tore its way out of her throat, starting as a human scream and ending as a terrifying, resonant howl that shattered the remaining windows. "Protect!" The command roared through her blood. She fell to her knees as her bones began to break. The pain was blinding, absolute agony, as 22 years of suppressed biology forced its way out in seconds. Her spine elongated, cracking like a whip, her jaw unhinged. The rogues froze, their ears flattening against their skulls. They turned away from Declan's unconscious body, staring at the girl writhing on the rug. They smelled it before they saw it. The scent wasn't just wolf. It was ozone, pine, and ancient power. It was the scent of a prime. Isabel's skin split. Fur, white as the blizzard outside, erupted. She didn't just shift. She exploded into form. When she stood, she was massive. She was easily a head taller than the rogues, her shoulders broad and muscular, her coat a blinding, pristine white. Her eyes were no longer human hazel. They were glowing, molten gold. The brown wolf snarled, trying to assert dominance. It was a fatal mistake. Isabel moved faster than thought. She crossed the room in a blur of white fur, her jaws, powerful enough to crush steel, clamped around the brown wolf's neck. There was a sickening crunch, a whimper, and then silence. She tossed the carcass aside like a rag doll. The other two wolves scrambled back, whimpering, tails tucked between their legs. They realized too late that they hadn't broken into a house with a helpless girl. They had walked into the den of a monster. They turned to run, scrabbling for the broken door. Isabel didn't let them leave. Delwyn Amanda had sent a message? She would send one back. She lunged. The fight lasted 10 seconds. When the silence finally returned to the cabin, the only sound was the crackling of the fire and the heavy, wet breathing of the white wolf. She stood amidst the carnage, her white muzzle stained crimson. "Isabel?" The voice was weak. Isabel whipped her head around. Declan was pushing himself up on one elbow, his face pale, blood streaming from his temple. He stared at her, his green eyes wide with awe and something that looked like reverence. He didn't flinch at the blood. He didn't look at the dead rogues. He only looked at her. "My God," he whispered, "you're beautiful." The rage in her chest began to recede, replaced by a sudden, crushing exhaustion. The adrenaline crash hit her like a physical blow. Her knees buckled. The massive white wolf collapsed to the floor, panting, as the magic released its hold. The painful shift back to human form began, but this time she wasn't afraid. She closed her golden eyes and let the darkness take her. When Isabel woke up again, she was back in the bed. But this time she felt different. The constant, low-level ache she had lived with her entire life, the joint pain, the fatigue, the brain fog, was gone. Her body felt light, thrumming with energy. She could hear the wind moving through the pine needles 100 yards away. She could smell the coffee brewing downstairs. She sat up. Her muscles were sore, but it was a good soreness, the soreness of victory. She found a heavy flannel shirt draped over the chair and pulled it on. It smelled like Declan, cedar and rain. She walked downstairs, her bare feet silent on the wood. Declan was in the kitchen, sweeping up glass with one hand. His other arm was in a sling, and he had a butterfly bandage over his left eyebrow. He stopped sweeping when he saw her. He straightened up, leaning on the broom. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I just slept for 20 years and finally woke up," Isabel said. She walked over to him, reaching out to touch the sling. "Your arm? Fractured radius. It'll heal by tomorrow. Wolf healing speed." He dismissed the injury with a wave of his hand. He looked at her intensely. "Isabel, do you know what you did last night?" "I killed them," she said, her voice steady. She expected to feel guilt. She felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "They were going to kill you. You didn't just kill them. You obliterated them." Declan walked around the island and pulled out a chair for her. "I've seen prime alphas before. My father was one. But I've never seen a shift like that. You bypassed the beta stage entirely. You went straight to apex." He poured her a cup of coffee. "I checked the bodies before I burned them. They had Amanda Pack tattoos, but they were carrying burner phones." "Delwyn," she said. "Delwyn," Declan agreed. He texted one of them. "Confirm the package is disposed of." Isabel wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "He thinks I'm dead. He thinks his mercenaries killed me and you, or that you killed me and the mercenaries killed you. Either way, he thinks he's won." "So," Declan sat opposite her. "What do you want to do? You can stay here. I can hide you. You can live a quiet life, Isabel. You're free." Isabel looked out the window at the snow-covered forest. A quiet life. It sounded nice. Safe. But then she thought of her mother, withering away under Delwyn's emotional abuse. She thought of the pills forced down her throat every morning. She thought of the pack, good people, families, children, suffering under a leader who stole money and murdered his predecessor. If she stayed here, Delwyn won. If she stayed here, she was still just the victim. Isabel turned back to Declan. Her eyes flashed gold. "I don't want to hide," she said. Declan smiled. It was a dark, dangerous smile that made him look like the Wolf King the legends claimed he was. "Good answer. The winter solstice gathering is in 2 days," Isabel said. "It's when all the regional packs meet at the Amanda estate to renew treaties. Delwyn will use it to announce his tragic loss of his stepdaughter and try to consolidate power. He'll be expecting a funeral," Declan mused. "Let's give him a resurrection," Isabel said. Declan reached across the table and took her hand. His grip was firm, grounding. "If we do this, we do it my way. We don't sneak in the back. We don't hide in the shadows." "How do we do it?" "We drive through the front gate," Declan said. "I am the Alpha of the North. I don't sneak. And you are the rightful queen of that pack. You walk in on my arm, and you take what is yours." He stood up. "But first, we need to get you ready. You can't go to war wearing my old flannel shirt." "We're snowed in," Isabel pointed out. "The mall is 3 hours away." Declan walked over to a closet near the mudroom. He pulled out a dusty black garment bag. "My mother," he said, his voice softening slightly. "She was about your size. She had expensive taste. She always said that if you're going to kill your enemies, you should look better than them while you do it." He unzipped the bag. Inside was a dress of midnight blue velvet, sleek and deadly, with a back that dipped low enough to show the curve of the spine. "Go try it on," Declan said. "The roads are clearing. We leave at dawn." Isabel took the dress. The fabric felt like armor in her hands. She looked at Declan. "Why are you doing this? You could just let me go and stay out of the war." Declan walked up to her, invading her space, his heat radiating against her. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Because," he murmured, his voice rough. "You saved my life, Isabel. And because the wolf inside me has decided that if anyone else touches you, I will burn the world down." He leaned in, brushing his lips against her forehead. It was chaste, but the intimacy of it burned hotter than fire. "Get dressed, Wolf Queen. We have a kingdom to conquer." The black Escalade wound its way up the serpentine driveway of the Amanda estate, tires crunching over fresh gravel and packed snow. From the back seat, Isabel watched the familiar trees pass by, the same trees she had stared at from her bedroom window for 20 years, while trapped in a haze of lethargy and medication. They looked different now, smaller, less like prison bars and more like timber. Beside her, Declan Moore was a statue of calm violence. He wasn't driving. He had brought his own beta, a silent man named Cole, to drive so that he could focus entirely on Isabel. Declan's hand rested on her knee, his thumb tracing slow, grounding circles against the velvet of the midnight blue dress. "Heart rate," Declan murmured, not looking at her. 110, Isabel admitted. "Good. Adrenaline is fuel. Just don't let it burn the engine out before we get inside." He turned to look at her then. The interior light caught the sharp angle of his jaw and the savage scar above his eyebrow. "Remember the plan. I am the muscle. You are the law. Tonight, you aren't a victim confronting an abuser. You are a queen evicting a squatter." Isabel took a deep breath. She could feel the wolf inside her, not sleeping, not drugged, but pacing. It was a massive, white thing, ancient and hungry. "I'm ready." The car stopped. The valet, a young kid from the pack who looked terrified to see the Blood Alpha's car, opened the door. Isabel stepped out. The cold mountain air hit her skin, but for the first time in her life, she didn't shiver. She burned. Inside the grand ballroom, the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, roast duck, and hypocrisy. Delwyn Amanda stood on the raised dais at the front of the room, tapping a silver spoon against a crystal champagne flute. The sound chimed through the hall, silencing the low roar of conversation from the 300 guests. Alphas, betas, and high-ranking pack members from across the tri-state area turned their attention to him. Delwyn looked the part of the grieving father perfectly. His tuxedo was impeccable, his face drawn in a practiced expression of solemn sorrow. "Thank you all for coming," Delwyn said, his voice trembling with just the right amount of emotion. "The winter solstice is usually a time of celebration. But tonight, the Amanda pack mourns. As many of you know, my stepdaughter, Isabel, the last remaining blood of the Bennett line, was lost to the storm 3 days ago." A collective murmur of sympathy rippled through the room. A few older women dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. "Isabel was troubled," Delwyn continued, bowing his head. "She was frail, weak of mind and body. We tried to protect her, but the madness of the wolfless often leads to tragedy. She wandered into the frozen wastes. We found only her scarf." He paused for effect, looking up with steely determination. "But the pack must survive. A pack cannot stand without a prime. Therefore tonight, I humbly accept the burden of leadership. I formally claim the title of Prime Alpha of the Amanda territory, to hold and to protect until my dying day." He raised his glass high. "To the Amanda pack." "To the Amanda pack," the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. The heavy oak double doors at the far end of the ballroom didn't open. They exploded inward. The boom was so loud it sounded like a cannon shot. Splinters of wood showered the entryway. The music cut out instantly. The crowd gasped, glasses lowering, heads whipping around in shock. Standing in the ruins of the doorway was Declan Moore. He wore a black suit that cost more than the car they drove in, cut sharp to fit his broad shoulders. He looked like death in designer wool. But he stepped aside. Isabel Bennett walked through the debris. She didn't look frail. She didn't look weak. She looked like a natural disaster, wrapped in blue velvet. Her hair was a dark cascade around her shoulders, and her skin glowed with health. But it was her presence that sucked the air out of the room. It was a physical weight, a heavy blanket of dominance that made the hair on the back of every wolf's neck stand up. "You're toasting too early, Delwyn," Isabel said. She didn't shout, yet her voice carried to the back of the room with crystal clarity. It had a harmonic undercurrent, the vox alpha. The sound vibrated in the chest cavities of everyone present. Delwyn dropped his glass. It shattered on the dais, champagne foaming over his patent leather shoes. "Isabel," he whispered, his face draining of blood. "No, you're dead. My men said—" He cut himself off, realizing he was speaking into a microphone. "Your men said what?" Declan called out, his voice a mocking drawl as he escorted Isabel down the center aisle. The crowd parted for them instantly, instinctually moving away from the predator, radiating lethal intent. "That they killed the girl? That they buried the body?" "Security!" Delwyn screamed, his composure shattering. "Remove them! That man is the butcher of the North. He has kidnapped a mentally unstable girl and is using her to stage a coup." 4 of Delwyn's personal enforcers, massive men with necks as thick as tree stumps, stepped out from the shadows of the stage. They moved to block the aisle, growling low in their throats. "Don't," Isabel said softly. She didn't stop walking. She simply looked at the lead enforcer. Her eyes flooded with molten gold. She pushed her aura outward, not as a shield, but as a hammer. Kneel. The command wasn't spoken. It was projected telepathically with the force of a freight train. The four enforcers didn't just stop. They collapsed. Their knees hit the marble floor with bone-jarring cracks. They whined, foreheads pressing to the ground, their wolves forcing them into submission before a superior bloodline. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Submitting 4 trained killers without lifting a finger was a feat of power that hadn't been seen in the territory since Isabel's father was alive. Isabel stepped over the prostrate enforcers and stopped at the base of the stairs. She looked up at Delwyn. He looked small now, sweaty. "You told them I was dormant," she said, her voice ringing with accusation. "You told them I was sick. But you were the sickness, Delwyn." Declan stepped up beside her, pulling a folded sheaf of papers from his jacket. He held them up for the room to see. "I have here a toxicology report from the St. James Medical Center," Declan announced, his voice booming. "Dated 2 days ago. It confirms that Isabel Bennett has been ingesting high doses of Aconitum napellus, wolf's bane, daily for the last decade, administered by her caretaker." He threw the papers onto the floor. They scattered like white feathers. He didn't protect her. He poisoned her. He kept the true alpha in a chemical coma so he could play king. The crowd began to murmur. Angry whispers turned into growls. The other regional alphas who had tolerated Delwyn but never respected him looked at him with open disgust. Poisoning a child was a crime punishable by death in the old laws. "Lies!" Delwyn roared, his eyes flashing a sickly, panicked yellow. Veins bulged in his neck. "She is a puppet, a fraud. I am the alpha. I hold the pack link." He realized he was losing them. He could smell the doubt in the air. The politics were over. Only violence remained. "I will not let a traitor take my pack!" Delwyn screamed. With a wet, tearing sound, Delwyn shifted. His tuxedo shredded as his bones rearranged. Within seconds, a massive grey wolf stood on the stage. He didn't hesitate. He launched himself off the dais, jaws snapping, aiming straight for Isabel's throat. The crowd screamed. Declan moved to intercept, his own claws extending, but Isabel shoved him back. "No!" she commanded. "He is mine!" Isabel didn't shift. She didn't have time, and she didn't need to. She rooted her feet to the floor, bent her knees, and waited. As the 300-pound grey wolf flew through the air, Isabel moved with a speed that blurred the vision. She didn't dodge. She caught him. Her left hand shot out, grabbing the wolf by the throat in mid-air. The momentum should have crushed her. Instead, she absorbed the impact, sliding back only a few inches. Her fingers, fueled by the hysterical strength of a prime, dug through the grey fur and clamped onto his windpipe like a steel vice. She slammed him down. Crack! The sound of the wolf's body hitting the marble floor echoed like a gunshot. The grey wolf yelped, a high-pitched sound of pain, and scrambled for purchase, his claws scratching uselessly against the stone. He tried to bite her arm, but Isabel was faster. She dropped her knee onto his chest, pinning him, and tightened her grip on his throat. She leaned down, her face inches from his snapping jaws. Her eyes were burning holes into his soul. "I am Isabel Bennett," she hissed, the growl underlying her human voice. "Daughter of Marcus, and I am taking back what you stole." She squeezed. Delwyn's wolf gagged, his eyes rolled back. He flailed, but against a prime, in full rage, he was nothing more than a puppy. The air left his lungs. The dominance rolling off her was suffocating him more than her hand was. "Submit," she commanded. Delwyn fought it. To submit was to lose everything. But biology was a cruel mistress. His wolf recognized its master. Slowly the fight drained out of him. His tail tucked between his legs. He went limp, baring his neck in the ultimate sign of surrender. Isabel held him there for a long moment, letting the entire room see the usurper pinned beneath the heel of the rightful queen. Then, with a look of utter disdain, she released him and stood up. Delwyn scrambled back, shifting clumsily back into his human form. He lay on the floor, naked, gasping, clutching his bruised throat. Isabel turned to the crowd. She spread her arms. "The Amanda pack is under new management," she declared. "Any objections?" 300 wolves dropped to one knee. The sound of fabric rustling filled the room as heads bowed. "Long live the Queen," someone whispered. Then another. Then the whole room was chanting it. "Long live the Queen! Long live the Queen!" Isabel let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since she was 5 years old. The heavy, dark cloud that had hung over her life dissipated. She felt the pack link snap into place in her mind. Not a burden, but a web of connection. She could feel their awe, their relief, their loyalty shifting to her. She looked down at Delwyn, who was shivering on the floor. "Get up," she said coldly, "and get out." Delwyn looked up, eyes wide with terror. "Isabel, please, I have nowhere." "You have the frozen wastes," she said, pointing to the shattered doors. "The same place you sent me. If you survive the night, keep running. If I ever smell your scent on my borders again, I won't be this merciful." Delwyn scrambled to his feet and ran. He didn't look back. He fled into the night, a king turned beggar in the span of 10 minutes. Isabel stood alone in the center of her kingdom. Her adrenaline crashed, and for a second the room spun. A warm, solid weight pressed against her back. Strong arms wrapped around her waist, holding her up. The scent of cedar and rosemary flooded her senses, grounding her instantly. "Easy," Declan whispered in her ear. "I've got you." Isabel leaned back into him, closing her eyes for a brief second to savor the warmth. "I didn't shift," she murmured. "I wanted to tear him apart. But I didn't want to get blood on your mother's dress." Declan chuckled, a low rumble that vibrated against her spine. "A wise decision. It's dry clean only." He turned her around so she was facing him. The crowd was still kneeling, respectfully averting their eyes, giving the new alpha a moment with her ally. Declan reached up and brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. His expression was no longer the mask of the butcher. It was open, raw, and full of pride. "You were magnificent," he said. "Terrifying, but magnificent." "I have a pack to run now," Isabel said, her hands resting on the lapels of his suit. "It's a mess. Finances are ruined. Treaties are broken. I'm going to need help." "Is that a job offer?" Declan raised an eyebrow. "It's a merger proposal," she corrected. She looked deep into his green eyes. "I hear the Alpha of the North is looking for a partner. Someone to keep him warm in that big, empty cabin." Declan grinned, a genuine, boyish smile that transformed his face. "I think he's open to negotiations." He didn't ask for permission. He simply lowered his head and captured her lips. It wasn't a tentative first kiss. It was a claim. It was passionate and deep, sealing a pact that was stronger than any paper treaty. Right there in the center of the Amanda ballroom, amidst the wreckage of the past, Isabel Bennett kissed the monster who had saved her. And for the first time in 20 years, the winter didn't feel cold at all. And just like that, the girl they tried to break became the queen who couldn't be broken. Legend says Delwyn froze to death that very night, a victim of the karma he created. But Isabel and Declan, They didn't just survive, they built a dynasty. They merged the North and South territories, creating the largest, safest pack in the country. And every year, on the anniversary of the storm, they say Declan still cooks her a pot roast, just to remind her that she never has to go hungry again. If this story gave you chills, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm find more people who love werewolf romances. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss next week's story. If you were Isabel, would you have banished Delwyn, or would you have finished him right there in the ballroom? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay wild.